Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. I'm your host, Coach Des, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. From lost trauma, disappointments, and devastation to healing, hope, and betterment, what has grounded me is my unbreakable spirit. We all have that spirit within us. Every week, I'm here to inspire you with stories of perseverance and growth. My mission is to help you crush self-limiting beliefs and to be unapologetically you. You are your only limit, so take action today. Let your unbreakable ride begin now. This episode is brought to you by Blue Skies Life, a lifestyle brand with high-quality, ethical, and sustainable products. There are products for your mind, body, and home, everything from calming tea and luxurious shea butter to Turkish towels and silk kimonos. The holiday season is upon us, so start getting these one-of-a-kind gifts now. Go to blueskieslife.com, that's BLUSKYSLIFE.com, and use code BU20 to get 20% off your order today. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. I am back today with a special guest calling in all the way from India today. And we were just talking about it being evening there and raining. And that's the opposite. I'm actually in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it's morning and it's hot. So we've got different countries and climates represented here today. But today I have Aakaash Borse with me, and I'm very excited. We actually share in the space of consulting, and he's the founding member and director at Faber Infinite Creative Solutions. He has expertise in organizational transformation, operational excellence, and change management, and global clients. We were just talking about having clients in 8 to 10 countries and industries, all the way from engineering to consumer goods to pharma and many others in between. And with his background, the company's organizational transformation framework and customized implementation approach, you're helping organizations achieve what I love, which is sustained change. It's really easy for a change to happen, but for it to be sustained is another thing. So welcome, Aakaash, to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. I look forward to talking to you and the audience as well.
Wonderful. Well, I wanted to start out before anything else asking you, how did you get into the industry of consulting and what prompted you to be a founding member of Faber Infinite Creative Solutions?
Yeah, that is something which is very close to my heart, the question that you have asked right now. So I'll take one step back and talk about my background. So I'm an engineer by academics, but then during my engineering days, I realized that I will need something more to keep me engaged and happy. So that's where I said that I'll have to get into something which is beyond the engineering stuff, and that's what I did. I got into operations management, and during my master's days, I realized that I would want to do something which is into consulting space. So I would say I was born consultant. So I started my career as a consultant. So I was associated with an American consulting group. I started that right after my campus placement from the college. I did that for almost around 12 to 14 months. So where we were working for clients all across the globe. We were serving clients in the US, Europe, as well as some of our projects that we did in Asia as well, where we were working on low-cost country sourcing projects. And that's when I realized that if this can be done for clients across the world, why can't I pick up consulting on my own? So that's where I branched out. Since then, I started working as a consultant for several consulting organizations, as well as several projects that we did for clients like United Nations, African Union, And of course, during the course, we also worked with a lot of private sector organizations. And during this journey of consulting across different territories, geographies, I met my other two co-founders. So that's where I met Jala and Vishal, where we were working on projects in Africa. And we internally realized that if we can do such phenomenal work across different countries, why can't we do that in India as well as Middle East, which are geographies closer to us? And that's where we started this organization almost 10 years back. So even before being into this domain of change management and starting up, I would say I was already into this domain of consulting.
That is wonderful. And tremendous experiences to be able to do work globally and be able to start something right there in your home country. It's so fascinating because oftentimes in conversations that I have with people, uh, as a consultant, everybody wonders, what does a consultant do? Like, what is the day in the life of a consultant? So I
True.
I know there is no average day because every day is a little bit different, but if you could walk me through, what are some of the kinds of problems that you solve for an organization when they want to partner with you?
Sure, I will go into details of that. But as you said, that there is no normal average day in consulting life. So I understand that we share the same domain. So that's where I can very well correlate with the question. So it's like the whole purpose of getting into consulting and starting up a consulting organization was that I always longed for something which was not normal. So I was always fascinated by looking at different industries and different challenges. So typically when it comes to our clients, why they engage with us or why we are on board is a constant quest for continual improvement. So where we work with our clients on continuous growth, which is sustainable. So typically, when it comes to progressive organizations, and of course, I'm sure when I'm talking about organizations, there are different sets of organizations. Typically, I'm talking about organizations which would want to get into the next league. That's where we come into picture. And it's all around tangible numbers where we are talking about increasing the profitability for our clients. Now, if I were to put that in plain, simple layman terms, there could be two ways to increase your profit. Either you increase your sales or you cut down on your cost. So that's if I were to talk about increase your top line or improve on your bottom line. So we
Mhm.
work with our clients on both these facets. So many of our clients in Africa, where we work with them on increasing sales, and it is hardcore implementation on the real field. So it is less of boardroom consulting that we do. It is more of implementation driven consulting. Whereas when it comes to the cost part of it, if I were to generalize it, we typically work with clients where clients need assistance in terms of quality improvement, cost reduction, delivery improvement. So there are more than 20, 25 such facets which comes to operational parameters. So if I were to quickly run through them, it's quality, cost, delivery, manpower, productivity, energy, yield, efficiency, inventory, safety. There could be so many such parameters that we work on. So it's a long list, but of course, the solution what we provide is how do you customize the solution to suit the local requirement.
Mhm.
So it's like if I were to go into further details, it completely depends on the client geography as well as the requirement. By virtue of our presence and the time that we have invested, we have worked with all different sectors. So there would be commercial farms in Africa where you have hectares and hectares of farming land, where we work with flower farms, tea farms, and where we apply concepts of Six Sigma to improve the yield there. At the other end, there could be highly technical engineering industries or pharmaceutical manufacturers where we work on improving their efficiencies.
That's wonderful, and I'm familiar with that as well. I know that lean, Kaizen events and that methodology is something that you uh, adopt and
Sure.
deploy in your process. And one of the things that um, I noticed about what you focus on is an organizational transformation framework. And is could you talk more about the
Yes.
framework and how it helps to achieve sustainable results?
Sure, sure. I will. I must say that you have done good amount of homework when you ask that question. So typically, we face that question: what is the methodology or the framework that you would be adopting to bring in that change? So, of course, as you said, there are different methodologies. So, whether that is lean, somebody calls it world class manufacturing, somebody calls it TPM or TPS or TOC for that matter. What we bring on the table is we pick and deploy the tool as per the need on the ground. So we are not married to one tool or one methodology. We have our own organizational transformation framework, which is Faber Infinite patented framework. So based on our so many years of experience, what we have done is we have refined the tool and the methodology as per the requirement on the ground. So many of our clients come to us that we would want to improve manpower productivity. So of course there would be tools from the toolbox, like whether you call it as a fundamental time and motion study, or it could be as uh, relevant like the study relating to DILO methodology. Or when it comes to quality improvement, it could be as advanced as design of experiments or 6 months, or it could be as fundamental as 7QC tools. So that is what makes us very, very unique and has helped us to work with clients on tangible results. So now that you're talking about the transformation framework, I must mention it here that what has helped us to stand shoulder to shoulder with large consulting organizations with hundreds of years of legacy is that we assure return on the consulting investment. So it is something like 5 to 10 times return on the consulting investment what we have been delivering.
That's incredible. That is an amazing return on investment. And for
Thank you.
any of you who are listening and are thinking maybe we're speaking a little bit of a crazy language, um, part of consulting, like Akash is talking about, is figuring out how to do things better, more efficiently, and cutting out the waste. So oftentimes, um, part of it is seeing a process and recognizing steps in a process that are extraneous, that don't need to be there, or certain things that are actually costing an organization more money. And when you improve on those things that are wasteful or too expensive or unnecessary, then their performance has the ability to get to the next level. And that's, all different industries face opportunities just like that. So, just to give a little bit more context
Right.
to the kind of things that we look
Of
for
course.
in the
So just,
consulting realm. But one of the things that I'm very excited to ask
yeah,
you about is change management. So, if we think about
sure.
change is hard. So whether it's a
Of course.
small company, a small company or a large organization, part of the challenge is change is disruptive. So even when change is perceived as being good, it's still disrupting the norm. So my question for you is,
Of course.
how do you address change to get the right kind of buy-in of an organization to make sure that it's successful? People believe in what change is happening.
Sure, I will do that. I hope I am audible. Yeah. So before we jump onto the change part, I would take this opportunity and add on to what you said, as in for your audience, that it should not appear that I'm talking alien language. So when we are talking about so when we are talking about improvement, we are talking about there could be two ways to improve. Resources, whether adding machines, adding people, and then you improve. But then there is a limit to it, how much you can add. But at the same time, there is another way, which typically is spoken in lean terminology, where you're eliminating the inefficiencies in the process, in the system. So there could be several such examples of those inefficiencies. So whether that is rework, whether that is equipment breakdown, or whether that is, say, yield loss, and so on and so forth. There could be plenty of those parameters. But typically, what the other side is, how do you eliminate and improve the processes? And that's where the change comes into picture. And one thing what you mentioned very correctly is, like, whether it is a large organization or it's a small organization, it doesn't matter. Everybody faces change as a very difficult subject. And in fact, today morning, I was talking to one of our colleagues, where I was mentioning it to her, that the small organizations always say that it is easier for the large organization, and vice versa. Whereas when it comes to the actual situation, it is equally difficult for both of them. So what happens when we come on the table, when we talk about change? All these tools that we have been talking about are freely available. They are like open source. So whether that is methods like lean or TPM and so on and so forth. What we bring on the table is, how do we select, pick and choose the change management method which suits the client organization. So it's like, if I were to talk about one very simple thing, as in it may appear simple, but then when it comes to actual implementation, it calls for a lot of effort and challenge, is what we do is we identify who are the people who are excited by the change. So it's like there are several steps into it. I'll just cut that down short and I'll talk about what is critical. So it's like, if I'm talking to a set of 100 people, there would be 20% who would be extremely positive, who would accept the change. There would be 20% who would be very negative. So there would be typical laggards who would say that this will not work in here, this has happened in the past, this is going to fail. And the rest, 60%, would be fence sitters. They'd be typically waiting and watching what's happening. Now, as a consultant, or whether it's an external consultant or an internal consultant, if you are to waste your energies on the laggards, the negative people, you're bound to fail. So that's where, as a consultant, it is very important that you identify which are those positive people who are accepting that change, encouraging them such that the fence sitters, the majority, 60% of the people, fall on the positive side, that they see that if we are following the change, we are getting rewarded. This is going to help us. So typically that's where you have the 80% of the chunk, which is the critical mass for you to drive that change. And what is left out of that 20%, you will have 10% people typically fall on your side, they'll agree to it, and the other rest 10%, they'll move out. So this is one simple thing what can drive change. And typically, if I were to extend this, this is the same phenomena or methodology people are adopting to bring in global change, if I were to say that. So if I were to launch a new phone into the market, or new, say, apparel into the market, or it is new technology, or same applies if I'm implementing Six Sigma within an organization. If I follow certain change management methods, the chances of success would increase. So I've just mentioned one of it. There could be plenty more that we can discuss in due course.
Yes, this is really great to hear. I can align with that approach very much. And the term that we use when we identify those individuals who are positive are champions, people who are champions of change. And I
Of
think
course.
that anyone who's listening,
Right.
um, I mean, you can think about it in your own household, even when you're trying to get the family on board with something, you usually get the one who is, excited about it, and you get them to be the advocate, right? The advocate for whatever it is that we're trying to move forward with. And, human psychology
Sure.
can be a challenging thing, but it's amazing how quickly you can get people to believe in something when they understand the benefits of it, they understand the impact of it. And I think the most important thing that I've found in the change space is the why. Why
Of course.
is the reason for the change, and what's in it for me? What is this going to
Right.
do fundamentally for me? And so I think a big question that I see um, is it going to make my job easier, faster? Am I going to have the tools that I need to be more effective? So it excites me to talk
Right.
about this subject.
Of course. So now that you mentioned it, that reminds me of what you are mentioning is called as Noster's model. So, which is a very recent change management framework, what was introduced by Nosters.
Hmm.
So, it typically talks about the first thing to drive change is vision. What is in it for me? So, if I am clearing that vision, that will make the road easier. And of course, there are four more elements beyond vision where you are talking about the skill set, or where you are talking about the incentives, or whether you're talking about resources, as you said, and finally having the right action plan.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize too, because you mentioned that there are a percentage of laggards or negative people, and sometimes for leaders of an organization that can feel daunting to have folks who can be, let's say, that bad apple that can spoil a bunch, if you will. And you know, my personal perspective on that is those individuals, you wouldn't want them there anyway. It might sound a little bit harsh, but for those people, oftentimes it's those that want to fly under the radar because they don't want to do things. They don't want their productivity levels to be at a certain place, or they might have had one foot out the door to, maybe they're ready
Right.
to go off and retire, or they're just, trying to do the minimum amount. But when you're thinking of creating an organization that's going from good to great, you want people that want to be there and want to, make the experience better. So it's a tough thing as a leader to
Of,
deal with, but it's a natural part of, I think, any organization.
of course, of course. And it's like when it comes to such a change initiative, it is that leadership, the top management commitment, which is very, very critical.
Hmm.
So, as Sensei Masaki Imai says, that it's like it calls for three ingredients for driving change. So the first one, as they say, is top management commitment, which is found in rare situation. The second one is top management commitment, and the third one is again top management commitment. So that is very, very critical. True.
That is the number one, Akash. That is so true. We say that if you
Of course.
having management commitment is more than half of what you need to get the change. It's more than 50% of
Of
what's
course.
required. It's like you can't pass go
True.
until you have that, right?
True. 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 True.
Yeah.
So it's
So
like accepting that there is possibility for improvement.
absolutely, absolutely. I could talk about change management for hours, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about is being an entrepreneur. So I know you mentioned being a consultant and then partnering with your two colleagues to found your own consultancy. My question for you is, what is the most fulfilling part? And then what is the most challenging part of being an entrepreneur?
Okay. So the most fulfilling part, it's a very interesting question, and when you're talking to an entrepreneur, I would say that is something which is closest to their hearts. What is fulfilling? So it is something like the kind of change what we are bringing in, and the kind of impact what it is having on lives of different people. That is very fulfilling. So it's like I will tell you. So of course, when we are working with organizations, of course, organizations improve. The profitability for the management improves. That is, of course, given, and that's why we are into existence. But beyond that, it also improves the quality of the life for all the people associated. So whether that is the management or the people, the operators who are working on the ground. So whether that's India, Africa, Middle East, I have had so many feedbacks from clients and client teams that whatever we did, say 5 years back, 10 years back, is still helping us. That changed our lives. So not only in terms of professional fronts, but also in personal terms, that has improved our lives. As in, of course, money is definitely there, financial improvement is definitely there, but along with that, the quality of life has also improved. So that is something which is very fulfilling. And as an organization, we have certain set values which are very close to our heart. And when we are talking about those values, we have been living by those values. So one of them, or rather, I'll talk about two of them. So one is where we are talking about improving the quality of life for all the stakeholders. So that includes our team members as well as the client teams, where we have been delivering that. And it's like that philosophy of undercommitting and overperforming. So that always there stays there with the clients as well as with the teams. The another thing that I would want to mention is what is fulfilling is we have been working with organizations or sectors which are touching humanity. So if I were to go into details of that, which are those sectors which touch humanity? So it's like your food, shelter, your clothing, pharmaceutical, which is medicine, and say technology. So we have been working in these domains very aggressively. And it's like you look at each and everything around you, I can say that we have been working in that particular industry. So it is like if I were to extend that to the very recent situation that the entire world is facing, the pandemic. When the pandemic started, everybody started looking for HCQ. One of our clients is one of the largest manufacturers of HCQ. And whatever we did for them over the past few years was helping them to increase the production, ramp up the production, and provide the world with HCQ. There's another client of ours which supplies to the vaccine manufacturers. And today we are talking about that vaccine is the only savior. Similarly, when the world was facing crunch of oxygen, this is one of the largest, India's largest and world's second largest cryogenic tank manufacturing company. So the kind of work that we did for them, or even now we work with them to enhance their production capacities, is kind of directly impacting the human race, the mankind, and what is something which we wanted to do. So all of this is very, very fulfilling. And as I'm sure You'll appreciate that. So I would cut that down here. And the next part, what you asked me was in terms of challenges. I would say every day is a challenge, and it's like, how do you deal with that challenge? So, if it's a very interesting life, and as they say that when it comes to being a first generation entrepreneur, and I would say it calls for a different set of mind, being a first generation entrepreneur. And in here, if it was a typical 9 to 5 setup, with due respects to people who are into that setup, they would have set of goals and direction coming up from the organization, from the management. But when it comes to an entrepreneur who's running a show on his own, he or she will have to pull up the socks on their own. So that is something which I would say is making this world different, where you need to look at opportunities, and I would not call them as challenges, opportunities either to improve or to grow, and lead the organization in that direction. So it could be anything. Like, one of the things that we have been working on is opening up 2 new regions or 2 new territories every year, and that's what we have been doing. Or it could be coming up with new offerings altogether, which keeps you relevant and which makes you more useful to the clients. So it's like one of our offerings is typically what we call it as lean facility design, which is our own patented offering in the market. So this is what we identified during the course of our work, is whenever, if any client is coming up with a new facility, if they are setting up a new greenfield project, or if they are expanding, they need a lot of things to be in place such that the facility is world class right from day zero. So rather than getting into a change initiative later, we do that initiative right at the beginning. So that's where we came up with this lean facility design, which is, I would say, derived from principles of lean management, industrial engineering, and project management. So there could be several such offerings, but then it's like, how do you identify that need and provide your solution on a regular basis? So makes it more interesting.
Yes. I appreciate so much your response, because even in the space of talking about challenges, you see that as opportunity. And I think that is such an important thing to call out in terms of having an entrepreneurial mindset. It's not a roadblock, it's something to improve upon. And I think that is a big distinction, for anybody who is looking for those characteristics of what it means to be a good entrepreneur, is to be a problem solver, right? And offer solutions to problems that we're facing in the world. So
Of
thank you
course,
for that.
I'm glad you appreciate that. Thank you.
So, Akash, one of the things that I like to do on my show is to ask also, in addition to questions that allow people to get to know your background, are questions that allow people to get to know you as my guest a little bit more personally. So, I'm going to jump into those questions. And the first
Sure.
question is pretty easy, I think, is what are 3 words that best describe you?
Okay. Now that is kind of very spontaneous. So the three words that would describe me would be resilient. The next one would be creative. And the third one could be, I am unable to recall, but then the third one could be, say, somebody who is a dreamer, who aspires a lot. So high on aspiration, perhaps.
Yes. I think those are really good qualities, especially for a consultant.
Of course, of course. All of
Okay,
them, they help you in your professional life. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. My next question for you is, what is something about yourself that you're working on improving?
Okay. So, one thing that I'm working on is to improve my fitness, which I have started very recently. So, having said that, I have always been on the fitter side, but then how do you increase the fitness levels is something what I'm currently working on. And if I were to extend that to the professional life, I am very fascinated by two aspects. One is the world of industrial IoT, what is popularly known as Industry 4.0.
Mhm.
So we are working in that space. So that is something that I am adding on to. The next one is what another aspect is very close to my heart is working with different entrepreneurs. So those budding entrepreneurs is something what I am working on as well.
That is wonderful. Do you like mentorship, Akash? Is that something that you enjoy doing? Mentoring other up and coming
Of course,
entrepreneurs? I feel that energy from
of
you.
course. So yeah, that is what. No, of course, thank you. So it is something like what I was always looking for during my early days. That is something that I would want to offer to people who are coming up. And there have been cases where budding entrepreneurs have wonderful ideas, wonderful products, but then they might lack, I would say, beyond funds, they might lack access to the market or having the right perspective of running that as a uh, profit center is something what is lacking in many of the cases, and that's what I have been trying to provide beyond the funds. If I were to say, of course funding is one of the aspects, but beyond that, these are the two main elements that we are working on with a few of them.
That is wonderful. Really great. Okay, my next question for you is, what is a self-limiting belief that you've had to overcome?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? There was a slight lag, I missed that.
Yeah, what is a self-limiting belief that you've had about yourself that you've had to overcome?
Okay, there might be many, but then now that something which comes something which comes to the top of my mind is being a first generation entrepreneur. So that is something which sometimes keeps coming up every now and then. But then now with time, I think I've learned how to overcome that. So there was one episode in my life where I had this opportunity of interacting um in a very close meeting with the current prime minister of the country, who was the chief minister then, uh, Narendra Modi. So when we had that opportunity of interacting with him, there was and it was a closed room event for the young entrepreneurs of the state or the province that I come from, Gujarat. So where we were discussing on all different facets of starting up and entrepreneurship. So one of the questions which came up is how does a first generation entrepreneur deal with the situation? How he or she can deal with the situation, and that's where he came up with a very interesting reply to that. It's like he mentioned that I am a first generation politician, and the same applies to being an entrepreneur as well. So so it's like if I can be a first generation politician, same thing can apply to you as well, and that kind of stuck with me. And this I'm talking about way back in 2012, 2013. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow, that's good. I like that. I like that. Okay. What is one thing that you would want to see changed in the world?
Okay. So, if I were to see, there are few things that I am working on. Of course, one is working on, as in supporting the sectors touching humanity, which is there. On personal front, I am also trying to author a book, so which is there. But along with all of that, one thing that I would look to change or want to see as changed is also aligned with what we are doing. Is we would want, personally, I would want to make India a first world country, and same applies to the geographies that we are working on. So whether that is Africa or India, we are talking about improving the competitiveness of these regions such that they become first world countries. So that is something I would want to see changed. So whether that is India or countries in Africa where we are working on, the reason being is there is a immense potential, and here we are not talking about I would say, in any ways degrading what the other countries across the world are doing. We are talking about improving the current situation in the geographies that we are working on. And I would say it is aligned with what we are doing. So we are working on improving competitiveness of these regions. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's remarkable. There's so many amazing, talented people in those countries. I myself partner with people in India who have advanced our thinking and our tools, our technology beyond what is imaginable. So I love what you're doing, and we need more people like you, Aakash.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So
Okay.
it's like it's a collective effort, and of course, it is definitely possible if there are more hands joining in. Yeah,
Yeah, I do think it's a collaboration. It's we're able to advance things when we work together, right?
of course.
Okay. The next question that I have for you is, what is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever been given?
Okay, so apart from the Narendra Modi advice, what I mentioned, uh, we had this opportunity of talking to one of the leading industrialists in the country, and he very simply put one of the finest advice that I have ever received is that be resilient, keep trying. So it is something like resilience is what pays. So there might be plenty of ideas around the world. So there would be so many budding entrepreneurs who would have those ideas of being the next Ubers or the next Apples of the world, but then very few succeed. So what differentiates them is that quality of being resilient. So it's like a river can cut through the rock as well. It's not because of the strength of the river, but it's because of the resilience, sheer resilience. And that is something what I have tried to inculcate since the day I heard him say that. And that has helped a lot. And I would say that would be my advice as well. But then, yeah, that is the advice which I take with me all the time.
That is great. Yeah, that's absolutely true about resiliency. So, Akash, can you tell everyone where they can find you? How can they follow your work? How can they reach out if there's interest in the services or just learning more about Faber Infinite Creative Solutions?
Sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for that opportunity. So just to add on to that, we have been working in this domain in India, Africa, Middle East. There are a couple of clients that we are serving in the US as well. So if anybody is keen to look at our offerings, the kind of work that we are doing, the website is called as www.faberinfinite.com. That is FABERINFINITE.com. That is all one word. Or you can reach out to us or reach out to me at AKAASH@faberinfinite.com. So I think in today's world, if I were to say faberinfinite.com, that would be the easiest way to reach out to us.
Excellent. Yes, I will make sure that in the show notes there's a link to your website so anybody who's interested can reach out to you. But I'm really grateful for the conversation this morning and learning a little bit about your company and the things that you do. I am passionate too about the space that we are in of change and helping not just organizations, like you said, become better, but also making the place that we live and the resource around us better. So I'm honored to have you today.
I'm really glad. Thank you so much. It was my privilege to be on this show, which is wonderful. So before we end, let me, with your permission, let me ask you one question, if that is
Sure.
okay.
Of course.
Right, yeah. So this, what we can see on the screen, it says Born Unbreakable.
Hmm.
See if you can talk more about that, if you can help me understand what is this Born Unbreakable, if you can throw some light on that.
Yes, that is such a great question. And I'm glad you asked because that's not always something that I get asked. But when I started the podcast and I started this show, one of the driving factors for me was being able to continue to rise to the occasion, even despite life's challenges. You know, I personally, I've gone through many different challenges from losing my father when I was young, when I was 9 years old. I've experienced divorce, which is
Oh,
a challenging thing to go through, but also a tremendous thing to grow from. And I've had to deal with different illnesses, you know, in my family. My mom has
oh,
diabetes, and she recently had a scare a few months back with a surgery that almost didn't go successfully. And I'm excited for her now that she's retired. But with those personal experiences for me, it just made me realize that I have unbreakable spirit that is able to continue, like you mentioned, the word resiliency, to bounce back and have the opportunity to grow from the experiences that um, maybe are a little bit painful. And with that, I know that others share in those same kinds of life experiences. And I wanted to create a platform where we could be in community with each other to show our experiences collectively and how we can rise above to do really great things in the world.
that is wonderful. That is really wonderful. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate you for the kind of work, the wonderful work that you're doing, and the kind of spirit that you are demonstrating, that being unbreakable. So it is commendable. Congratulations to you for that.
Thank you, Akash. I really appreciate you and for asking the question. Like I said, it's amazing to share in this space with people like you who are entrepreneurs that are sharing your experience with the world, because I think those are the kinds of things that bring us together. You mentioned humanity, and I would love to see more of that, of us partnering together across the world to make life's experience that much more rich.
Sure, of course. And that is what makes this movement going. So thank you so much once again for having me. And I look forward to collaborating with you and your audience in time to come.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Continuous improvement. That is the name of the game for anybody in the consulting space. It was so much fun talking to Aakaash Borse, who is also the founder of his own consultancy. I've been having such an amazing time talking for the last couple of weeks with entrepreneurs, starting their journeys. And one of the common threads that I found, which is something that I love to look for, is themes, is not just impacting a company, a person, or an organization, but the broader impact that we can have on the communities around us. There's this sense of global impact, and that is something that I would encourage you to take away from today's episode into your life. What are you doing today that is impacting something bigger than yourself? Whether it's locally in your community, something that's impacting your state, something that is touching beyond the walls and the borders of your state into other parts of the country or even the world. It just is evidence that we as individuals have the ability to make a big impact. Don't play small. Think big. And like Aakash mentioned today in the wonderful characteristics that came up about him personally and his own philosophy, is resiliency. And resiliency is our ability to bounce back from difficulty. I thought it was so cool that he asked me about Born Unbreakable. That's not something that people usually do, at least to that level. So think about your impact and just know that you have the ability to make a difference. And despite change being hard, like we talked about today, you can persevere when you rally around to get the right people who are like-minded and have a positive attitude to evoke the change that you want to see in the world. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in again next week for another inspiring episode of the Born Unbreakable podcast. Remember, you are your only limit, so take action today. See you next time.